So it's a real pleasure to welcome Andrea McLean to our podcast today. Andrea was on daytime TV for 23 years, from her days on GMTV until her really emotional goodbye as host of Loose Women after something like 1,400 episodes. An author, presenter, journalist, and a life coach now, she's lived her midlife in the spotlight, with a hysterectomy sending her into menopause and experiencing symptoms on air. Oh my gosh, I feel for you. A combination of a nervous breakdown in 2019 and the pandemic made Andrea determined to be brave and to give her new venture and what she believes is her real calling to make midlife women feel great again through her platform, This Girl Is on Fire, created with her husband, Nick Feeney. It's a podcast, a website, an app, and a Facebook group. This Girl Is on Fire tackles midlife topics head on in a safe place, meeting with other women virtually at the same stage of life. And it's a really positive social platform for women who are halfway through, not halfway done. I love that quote of yours, Andrea.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. And I can tell you where that quote came from, if you like, because it definitely didn't come from a moment of, you know, blissful midlife joy. It actually came from me doing SAS Who Dares Wins and being confronted with Ant Middleton and all the other SAS ex-soldiers and all this sort of stuff. And I got asked, why on earth would a woman in midlife? 'Cause I was 49 when I did it. At the time, I was the oldest person to take part, and at the time I was the oldest woman to take part. It was the first series where they allowed women in, and they said, why are you here? And I said, because I want to show that I'm halfway through, not halfway done. And it just kind of came out. And then it was afterwards when they showed it on the telly, I thought, that's actually really good. I
Yeah,
just said it off the top of my head, but actually I'm going to keep that. That's really
that
good.
should go on a t-shirt right
It
there.
should,
Trademark
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Ah, you're really brave doing SAS, but you're also brave leaving daytime TV, as everyone has talked about. It's very public, but I really admire that you took that leap. And obviously, you've been massively inspirational to many other women who, in midlife, want to reinvent themselves or find a different purpose. So, why did you become a life coach?
Well, I mean, I suppose there's a few things wrapped up in there, and many people have asked me, couldn't you have done both? And really, I had been doing what I do now alongside working on TV for a number of years. I'd just been doing it in a different form. So, this Girls on Fire started as a really simple online blog. It started really because I had to say on air that I was going to be off work for 6 weeks because I was having a hysterectomy, for the simple reason that lovely Linda Robson said, you got to say something or people will think you're being fired. And it hadn't crossed my mind that I would have to say something out, something so personal out loud. And that moment literally changed my life because it meant I was talking really publicly about something that I was going through in real time. Because previously, yes, I'd spoken about difficulties I'd had in the past, but I'd kind of spoken about them after the event. This I was now talking about in real time. And I started answering women's questions via social media, direct messages, and this sort of thing. And I realized, oh gosh, I can't keep up with this. Within 24 hours, 10,000 women got in touch with me. It was like a tsunami of questions. And so I decided to start a blog. And that in turn, led to, I ended up writing a book, and then that led to a website, and it kind of snowballed from there. So leading up to, why did I decide to leave my job? It was such an important thing that I couldn't divide both my energies equally. And I'd been working in my job for, over 2 decades, something many midlife people, not just women, find themselves doing. And I was it was the middle of the pandemic. All of us were thrown into this crazy situation that you could not have foreseen. And I think me, like many other people, sort of sat down with myself and thought, this is shown you only get one shot at life. We don't know what's happening right now. It felt like Armageddon. We kind of forget now, now that things are sort of back to normal, what that feeling was like, especially in that first year when we were in lockdown and everything else. And I thought, if it all was to end, are you really focusing on what you truly love? And I thought, no, I'm splitting my time. So actually, I need to go all in on this. So people think that I kind of walked away from television almost in a fit of pique or what have you. No, it wasn't that. It was a very surreal time for all of us. And all I did was I left the job that I was in. Um, I'd happily go back and do some sort of telly. I just needed to focus purely on this passion that I had for making people feel good. Um, and it people have said, "Gosh, you're brave." I have to be really honest with you. At the time, it didn't feel brave because it felt like just this thing that I had to do. Now I look back and think, oh my God, were you a crazy person? That was so brave. It's like when you look back on anything that you do in your life, it's with hindsight that you realize that really was quite a big leap, wasn't it? At the time, I was so filled with sort of, positivity and I'm going to change the world and it's all going to be amazing. And I didn't really feel nervous and apprehensive, but also excited. And the word I like to use for my community was I felt nervous-sighted. There's like a nervous energy about it all. But yeah, it's only looking back now that I think, crikey, that really was quite something, wasn't it?
It really was. Yeah, and hindsight, you're right. Hindsight is 2020 when you realize what you could have lost. But I like the way that you phrased it. I've heard you say that you sat down and you wrote a instead of a what if it all goes wrong list, changed it to what if it all goes right list.
Well,
That's a brilliant reframing.
I did both. So the way I see it is so often we hold ourselves back because we think, oh, but what if everyone laughs at me? What if I make a fool of myself? What if I lose everything? What if I lose my respect, my dignity, and all of these things? Never mind, financially and all of that. And then I thought, okay, if you're going to look so with such intent at all the what ifs that could go wrong, you also need to look with intent at all the what ifs that could go right. So I flipped every problem that I had on its head and I looked at both sides. But what I also did is I wrote down, and I sat with Nick and did this. Um, I also wrote what we then called, we didn't at the time, but we sort of called afterwards, our blueprint for failure. And what that meant was rather than just being kind of Pollyanna-ish about it, and, yeah, it could go wrong, but oh, it's like a Disney movie or a Hallmark film. It could all be amazing and all could go right. And, the bit that you see next is me with a ponytail chewing a pencil and a slightly golden glow, just kind of prancing around, painting an office, and then that bit is done in montage, and then afterwards it's, oh, she's a global billionaire and she took over the world. It's like, no, okay, let's look really realistically at all the things that could go wrong. Look it in the face and then ask yourself, right, if that happens, could you live with that and still go forward? Yes. All right, what would you do? Okay, I could do this. And it was like a flow chart, and what it gave us both was a flow chart of solutions of what we could do if various problems came up. And I'd advise anyone who's making any kind of life change, doesn't have to be in midlife, it could be at any point, absolutely do the what if. And instead of just focusing on the negative, to keep yourself stuck. And let's be really honest, most of the time when we go, but what if this happens? What if it goes wrong? We're kind of doing it to self perpetuate our stuckness. We're doing it to keep ourselves where we are. And that's understandable because even if we don't like where we are, we know where we are. It's better the devil we know. We're comfortable with
Totally.
it. That can be a relationship. It can be a job. It can be our physical health. It could be anything. So do the what if game and flip it around. And then also go, right, okay, I think I'm going to do this. Write down a list of everything that could go wrong with a little flow chart of all your solutions. And then what that does, not only do you sort of feel better and you think it's like packing a little backpack of solutions. You feel like, okay, I'm going to go on this journey now, and I've got my Dora the Explorer bag. I can pull out my magic map, and I'm kind of all right. And I think once you feel, especially as women, actually, once we feel like we're a little bit prepared, we feel a bit better. It's the fear of the unknown that holds us back
Yeah,
most of the time.
absolutely. Yeah, it's having that toolbox at
Yeah,
your disposal and knowing whichever way, whichever fork in the road happens, you've got that ready. You've got a plan for that each time.
yeah,
I see it as being realistic, but
yes,
believing in yourself. I mean, my husband and I set. I mean, like I worked with my husband years ago, And it is that you've got to have that belief. And I really feel if you don't, it does fail. I've seen lots of businesses that have failed, but if you believe, but you're realistic and you've done, you proved it.
And I also think as well, don't be afraid to change in it. I think that, if you read a lot of the magazines or online advice columns or what have you, or even on Instagram, there's this idea of, well, I'm just gonna be a girl boss bitch, and I'm just gonna believe in myself, and it will all I'm gonna manifest, and it's all just gonna be great. Now, I believe in manifesting, I believe in vision boards and all this sort of stuff. But you don't just kind of put it out there and then off you go, and I'm gonna manifest the hell out of this, and I'm just gonna be really rigid and stick to my path. Actually, be really open to changing direction. Be open to the idea that actually this big goal that you have, you may achieve it, but it may not look at all how you thought it was going to. And also be prepared to look it in the face and go, do you know what? This isn't working. This isn't working the way I thought it would, or the way I would like it to. So actually, I'm going to put this bit down and I'm going to focus on something else. And that doesn't mean you failed. Actually, for me, it's a power move. We all know people who have stayed in jobs that they hate because they're too scared to go, stayed in relationships too long because they're too scared to go. It's exactly the same thing if you've made a huge life decision and walked away, and then you realize, you know what, this isn't going quite the way I thought. I'm going to stop. I'm going to regroup. I'm going to change direction. If your sat nav is going loop the loop, I have the craziest sat nav system. Nick laughs at me. I don't know what happens whenever I'm driving the car, or especially if I'm on my own. My sat nav suddenly decides, I'm going to take you to the middle of a field in the middle of nowhere, and then go recalculating. And the amount of times I've had to ring Nick, and he's literally sat there with Find My Friend or whatever it is, so you can see my location. And he's on his phone going, babe, you're in a field. I don't know how you got there. Okay, right, turn around. What can you see? And I'm like, I can see trees. There's lots of swearing. All I can see is trees. And he guides me back. It's the same with life. Sometimes you're marching off full of intent, then you realize my bloody sat nav isn't working how I thought. I'm in the middle of a field, and actually I'm just going to stop and regroup and start again. Not failure. You'd be more of a failure if you just kept going, just because you were too embarrassed. That's what I think.
That's the beauty of maturity, really, isn't it? I think that's what a lot of midlife men or women in your 40s, 50s, 60s, you're bringing that hindsight, you're bringing that wisdom and maturity. And when I see women leaving their jobs because it's not working for them, because the menopause is making it difficult to work, confidence is eroded, anxiety is a problem. What we're losing in that women workforce is a tragedy, and we should do what we can to keep people in those jobs or get into jobs that more suit our personality at that point of our life, because we're bringing so much to the table. We don't want to lose those skills and mindsets.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that there's something that you said there that's so important, that yes, we may be losing it from the workforce in the space that you've always been in, but maybe sit down with yourself and think, do I even want to do this anymore? And I think the problem then comes is that rising panic of, but this is all I know, and I don't know what else I want to do, and I haven't got time to try and learn anything else, and the world is moving so fast, and I already feel really left behind. What the hell can I do? And I think this is where coaching is so important. And this can be a business coaching, a life coaching, whatever it is. Because what they will help you do is take this tangled ball of a mess of thoughts inside your head and really help you lay it all out. It's almost as if you're taking all your thoughts and you're writing, and we do this at home on the dining table, and we do it as a family, we do it with the kids, we do it ourselves. Put all these, whether it's worries, concerns, skills, whatever, different color post-it notes, and you kind of put them around the table and then go, right, this is what I'm good at. This is what I'm feeling anxious about. This is where I feel I need to do a little bit of work on. How can I put this into a structure that I can make it work for me. Right. Okay. If we're talking a job, what could I do? What skill sets do I have that I can pull all this in line? Okay. I think this. Who do I know that's in this space, and who can I speak to and think, am I being realistic with this, or am I completely out of my, out of my league? Okay. I'm out of my league. What skills do I need to learn? And this is something that I think when we get to midlife, we haven't learned something new for a while. We've kind of been so busy juggling all the the family plate, the relationship plate, the work plate, the blooming taking care of the dog plate, all the other plates that we're sort of spinning. And we think, how can I fit in learning something else? For the love of God, I don't have a minute to myself. How can I fit in learning? Actually, these post-it notes, stick them all down, think, right, one, what can I delegate? So I'm not spinning all the blooming plate. And then in that time, how can I use that to learn? Magical things happen, because we get to midlife and we think, my brain is grey. I don't have any room for any more knowledge. I'm too tired. I just want everything to be nice. Actually, even if it's going to evening school, even if it's doing an online course, it's almost like there's little sparks in your head that haven't kind of ignited for a while, and they start to go. I almost visualize them as like a pilot light, and they start to light up, and you realize, do you know, I'm not the Walking Dead. Sometimes I have felt like the blooming Walking Dead, and there's still bits of me in there that can get excited about stuff. And I tell you something else that happens: you get braver, and you look around. And this is when in midlife you become glorious, because you become a royal pain in the bum, because you start saying to your family and to everyone else, I'm not going to do that anymore.
Yeah.
Oh.
I'm not going to do that anymore. Actually, do you know all this stuff that I've been literally carrying you and carrying you and carrying you? You can all either bugger off or sort yourself out. I'm off to evening classes. And I tell you what, the fallout was catastrophic, because everyone's like, what are you doing? I've just been so taking you for granted and so used to you doing this thing. And the kids are like, but you're always there to pick me up. No,
Yeah.
I'm not. You're going to have to find your own way. And
the power of no.
Yes, no is a complete sentence. And the first time I heard that, I was mind blown, because I'm in my 50s. I was raised in a certain way, which is be nice, be quiet, acquiesce, be a good girl, do what dad says, do what your mum says, stop making a fuss, be tidy. And all my relationships, my behavior has been that way. And I'm fighting constantly against this big, polite muscle that is in my body.
Gosh,
that
that's
constantly
true.
goes, what are you doing? Sit down, be quiet, nobody's interested. And it takes a lot, actually, to sort of stand up against that, because you, in your head, you're being rude, you're standing up against your mum, your dad, your teachers, your bosses. And actually, when you look around and realize, my sister and I laughed about this the other day. I'm in my 50s, my sister's about to be 50, and she said, I said to her, actually, I realized I was always scared to say no to middle-aged men, because to me they were dad. And I've suddenly realized I'm now the same age as my dad was when I was scared to say no to him. I'm now a middle-aged man, and I can say no to myself if I want to. And it was the most incredible, I'm now at this point. And it's hard. But actually, once you do it, you feel like the lady in that poem who wears purple and a hat that doesn't suit you, and you run your stick along the railings and blow raspberries at people. It's actually really joyous. It's so much fun.
It's an epiphany, isn't it? we sort of, what's the word? You step into your power. But it's true. We have so much to give. I'm just chatting to you on this platform, and I almost forgot to ask any questions, because I feel.
Oh, sorry.
Like
I do talk a lot.
it.
No, I do talk a lot.
I'm completely drawn in by everything that you say. It's what you're so inspiring.
Well, what you're saying is literally what, I think, I've certainly been through. It's like learning to say no.
But it's articulating what we're thinking, but not realizing that we were thinking it. Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
it does. And also, it's not like you do that and then once, and then you stand there with your hands on your hips and the wind blowing in your hair like you're J-Lo. I get very stressed about J-Lo because I just think the amount of work that woman does to keep her abs,
Yeah.
her washboard abs. I get very stressed by it. Standing there like this with the wind blowing in your hair and then you're done. You're not. What's really annoying is you do it once and you think, ha ha. And then about 2 months later, you realize, oh no, I'm back to where I was again. Actually, I'm feeling really small and quite crumbly. And I feel a little bit tearful and anxious. And actually, I'm even scared sometimes to speak up to that rude neighbor who really I should do. And then you have to kind of gather yourself and do it again. And I think that's the bit that does get hard is you've had a lifetime of behavior and learnings, that's got you to this point. You don't just do it once and then that's it. It's all kind of done. You do have to keep doing it, and that can get really tiring. Kind of, right, okay, gather. Here we go. I'm going to do this again. I'm too tired. No, no, you can do this. The amount of internal monologuing that goes on in middle-aged women is quite hilarious. I think if actually people could hear what we were thinking, it'd be deafening. It would be deafening.
It would, wouldn't it?
That's probably why I don't sleep very well, because I'm always thinking about things or what I should have said or what I'm going to say. Yeah.
Nick and I, we had a little moment last night, funny enough, because when I say moment, it was a marriage little tetchiness moment, and we'd been talking about. I was running. This is so silly. Running out of eye makeup remover, and he went. I said,
Is
to
that
him,
for Nick or you?
It was for Nick. Yeah, it was for me. And I said to him in passing, because I get it from Amazon. And I said, I keep seeing this eye makeup remover that I'm running out of. And then by the time I go out of the bathroom, I've forgotten, I need to order that. And then every night when I go to take my makeup off, I think, I need to order that stuff. And he said, I'll do it for you. It's on Amazon. I'll order it for you. Okay. So he walked out. Well, I'm brushing my teeth. Da, 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 da. He shouts something from the bedroom. I didn't quite hear him. Carry on. And then I went in and he said something. What are you talking about? And he went, you always do this. Literally, the last conversation that we had was talking about ordering eye makeup remover from Amazon. So I'm on Amazon now. And I went, no, that's the last conversation that you had with me. I've had 1,000 conversations since then. Since then, I've thought of 1,000 different things that I need to do, or people that I need to speak to, or things to add to my to-do list. In my head, that was 4 days ago. I can't remember what. And he looked at me like I'd gone mad. And actually, I do think that's quite a female thing. That in the 5 minutes that he'd left the room, I had literally had 100 other conversations. It was just with myself.
We're on like super warp speed with our thoughts, aren't we?
Yes.
Yeah. That's a really good point. It's a really good point.
Well, that's it. We're too busy in our heads.
Yeah.
We are.
Well, you mentioned that you're we're all people pleasers, aren't we? Women and girls, we're sort of brought up to be people pleasers. And I think one of the hard things, I was listening to you talk about loneliness, which I do think is a really dreadfully sad, very common thing for us at our stage of life. There's so many reasons that we might feel lonely. Our kids may have gone off to university or left home. Our relationships may not be quite in the place that we want them to be. I think I've heard you mention the loneliness of the marital bed. You've been with somebody for maybe decades, and maybe there's just not that much between you anymore, that you don't even know how to speak or to be with one another. Can you just talk us through a little bit more about, loneliness and how to tackle that when you might be feeling like very small and unable to deal with it?
I think small is such a key word here. And I think it is, once you recognize actually that so much of your internal monologuing, everything that we've just been joking about there, how many thoughts go through our head at any given time. So much of that internal monologuing, whether it is sort of ruminating over how sad you feel that your relationship is not what it once was, how alone you feel because maybe you're not communicating as well as you once did, that spark that I mentioned isn't there. Maybe it's that the kids don't need you as much as they did, or you're feeling displaced at work, and suddenly and it's such a strange feeling when you look around and you realize, oh my gosh, I'm the older person here at work. How did that happen? I remember when I was a bright young thing, suddenly I'm the older person. This is really strange. Am I relevant anymore? A lot of the words that we use and the tone that we use with ourselves makes us feel very small, and what that does is it makes the problem seem so big, and this can happen to us at any moment in life. But I think that there is a particular insidious loneliness that creeps in in middle age, and I think that unless we have the tools to learn how to keep that in check, that grows and grows as you get older, and it does get worse unless you find a way to change your circumstances or your thinking. One of the most powerful tools that we have in our toolbox is so simple when it comes to feeling small. And I learned it many years ago from a coach friend of mine. And actually, it was to do with the problem I was having at the time. And but I realized actually I can use it with loneliness. And he said to me, the way you're describing how you're feeling right now, you seem really small. And he's really joyous. He's a lovely coach, actually. He's very joyous, very fun. He always makes everything very lighthearted. And he said, I'm imagining you're so weeny, I can hardly hear you. You're so little. And he said, you need to find a way to shift the balance so that you yourself get bigger, and whatever it is that is making you feel this way, whether it is problems in your relationship or whether it is loneliness or whatever it is, and you can make them feel smaller. So we talked through, right, all the things that are bothering you. And again, you can jot them down on a piece of paper or mentally, ruminate in your head. And now literally imagine yourself, and the brain is so powerful. And this is why we can sometimes end up in a tailspin with our emotions, because our brain very often doesn't know the difference between an imagined emotion and a real experience that we're having. And if we're ruminating on how awful we're feeling, our whole body starts to absorb that, and it feels real, rather than, I'm not saying that it's not real, you may genuinely have problems, but it starts to feel really real and become bigger than the sum of its parts. And he said, now imagine this thing, whether it is a person who's making you feel this way or a situation. And now imagine it shrinking and you're growing. And I was like, what the hell are you talking about? This sounds insane. And yet I've done it so many times. And you imagine them shrinking and you're getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And what's so powerful about this is if it's a person that is making you feel bad about yourself, or whether it is a problem or whatever, as you imagine them getting smaller, something really funny happens. And the smaller someone gets, the squeakier their voice becomes. It's, you imagine it in a cartoon. The smaller they get really small. And they become slightly ridiculous. And then this thing that seemed so hurtful and so overwhelming and so unfair, and that was keeping you feeling stuck and sad in the way that you are actually able to look down on it and go, oh my gosh, you're actually ridiculous. Why was I feeling so overwhelmed by you? And I remember he said, now, clearly in real life, this isn't very altruistic and it's not very kind. He said, if it makes you feel any better, step on them.
Yes.
Like, oh, this is fabulous. And any Buddhist watching, I really do appreciate this isn't very kind. So maybe they don't actually get squashed. Maybe they just disappear in a puff of smoke and go to another universe. But you stomp on them, you imagine yourself, and then you do actually feel better. And that might sound like quite an abstract way to talk about loneliness, but the reason that I use it as an example is because we all feel lonely for different things. And yes, I can talk about the loneliness of a marital bed. There is no other loneliness like it. When you are lying next to someone who you literally you couldn't get enough of each other. Just the fact that you were lying in each other's arms was heaven on earth. And now you're lying there and you are rigid, and any movement they make sets your teeth on edge. Any movement you make sets their teeth on edge. How they breathe annoys you. How you breathe annoys them. Everything that you do and they do, instead of setting you on a path of delight and love, makes you feel angry, sad, rejected, and alone. And you can't say anything or do anything about it because you have friendship groups together. your families have blended together, you have children together, and you feel so unbearably stuck. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that you use this visualization to shrink down your partner and step on them. That's not necessarily very kind. But what you can do is maybe find a way to reduce the size of the problem so that you can look at it in a way that makes you feel a little bit more in control. Because I do think as women, we have such powerful imaginations. You know, that's what makes us so beautiful and creative and able to multitask. But sometimes it can overwhelm us. And if we can shrink everything down to a level that, okay, these are my cons, these are my pros. I'm a big one for writing lists. Right, these are the problems that I think we're having in our relationship right now. Do this on your own, first of all, so that you have a balanced take on it rather than just being wound up in a ball of emotion with it. Right, and what can I do about that? And then you're able to sit and have a practical conversation about it rather than how you feel about it. Because sometimes that's where the disconnect happens, because you get so wound up in, and yes, of course, address it. It's making me feel like this without blame. You're making me feel like this. This situation is making me feel like this. And again, that can be the relationship, or my kids have gone and now I don't feel like I've got purpose anymore. I remember my son went off to university. I sat on his bed and sobbed. And then 20 minutes later, he came back again because he'd forgotten his duvet. And then I was raging. I was thinking, you're so ridiculous. And then it wasn't so bad anymore. And then I turned his room into an office and I've never looked back. That's not quite true, but you know what I mean. So I do think that, you know, this epidemic of loneliness that happens to us in midlife, so often we can let ourselves, and understandably so, because they're horrible feelings, just get swamped by it. So if we can find ways to make the issue itself smaller, so we can look at it with a stronger sense of ourself, it helps us come up with ideas as to how we can overcome it. Because I do think, particularly as women in midlife, we don't necessarily want to bother anybody and reach out and ask for help. And also, we don't want to own up to that we're feeling this way, even to friends. You know, we meet up with friends, we have coffee, we laugh and joke, and they may be going through something that we see as that's a proper problem. What I'm going through now, you know, we have friends we all do. We have friends who are experiencing cancer. We have friends who are experiencing bereavement or financial hardships. And for us to say, I feel lonely, sounds so small in comparison, even though it feels so big. So I think if we can find a way, unless you have you know, someone that you really do feel you can open up with, if you can find a way to kind of deal with the start of it on your own, so that then you can, you know, start the process of helping yourself, then you're sort of able to sit down and go, do you know what, I was feeling really lonely recently. Was anybody else feeling like this? It's easier to then have that conversation rather than feeling like, oh, but I'm going to be the Eeyore of the group and no one's going to, well, here she goes again.
It's almost, sorry, go ahead.
Well, that's what's good about your community, because, you know, your Facebook, you can actually say that stuff without, you're not saying it to your friends. It's like an anonymous person you're saying it to, and it gets it off your chest.
It does. And what's great about the This Girl's on Fire community, so for full transparency, we've actually, the app itself has gone now purely because we recognize that human behavior being what it was, whilst and we've taken the courses and the masterclasses and everything else that I had out of the app, and they are now, everyone can access them. And actually we've realized that's a more powerful way to help people, because they can pick and choose and work through the masterclasses on their own, rather than when I spoke to my community, some of them were feeling overwhelmed that there was one a month and they were like, I can't actually keep up with this. Now they can just purchase them separately. And I took the community side of it and I put it into a private Facebook group, because then again, it was a habit that they were used to. They were used to being in a private Facebook group. And what I love about this is exactly like what you've just said. We have women in the group who every week I go live with either an expert or on a subject, or I will talk openly about a subject, or I bring Nick in and we talk openly about a subject. And for me, that it's about informing but also sparking debate. And what I love about the Facebook group is that women are owning up to feeling ways within that safe space that they wouldn't do with their friends. And I totally get that. And some of the women invite, and I get it all because I'm the gatekeeper. So I'm the one who, because it's a private group, I let people in or not. And that's really important because we've had some men try and join. I don't know what they were thinking. Clearly thought this girl's on fire was a whole different thing. So, I have to make sure there's a safe space. So we have women, they'll invite 20 people, 30 people, this sort of stuff. Even then, I know they've been selective about who they've invited because it's not every friend. We have a friend that we're open with, we have a friend that we're funny with, we have a friend that we go for drinks with, a friend that we play tennis with. And not every friend is receptive to the idea of being totally honest with our feelings. So I actually love how that dynamic has changed by having it in Facebook. And I put my little bits in and then I step back. I don't micromanage. I let them have their conversations with themselves because then they find their own feet with it and are able to articulate without thinking, am I saying the right thing? Is Andrea going to be impressed by this? Or is Andrea going to come back on this and what have you? It's not about me. It's about you. I just give you a space to have your conversation.
That sounds wonderful. It really does. And it's so interesting to actually find women properly supporting women. Do you know what I mean by that? Sometimes we can hashtag the heck out of that phrase, women supporting women, but actually some women don't support other women. Some women can be really quite angry, put out, annoyed if there's success by a woman and they get sidelined by it. But it really does sound, and from what I've seen, This Girl Is on Fire really is a community that is very strong and supportive and warm and safe, as you said.
Thank you. And I work hard to keep it that way and make it a safe online space because, I wrestled with the idea of keeping it private because clearly I would get a lot more traction. And it would end up in the papers and it would all of this sort of stuff. I would really be kind of showcasing, look how smart I am. Look at this stuff that I know. And look at these experts and all this sort of thing. And I thought, no, that's not why I'm doing this. I'm doing this because I want it to be in a safe space so people can actually learn and benefit from it rather than kind of showing off about what I'm doing.
Yes.
And so it's free. The Facebook group is free and it is private. It takes a lot of organizing. You'll know this, to weekly make sure that I have guests, that I go live, that I do whatever. I don't have to do it, but I want to do it because I know that I'm really lucky that I get access to people fairly easily that other people would have to struggle a little bit to get hold of. And they know, like, and trust me because they know I'm never going to stitch them up. I will only ever get them on the platform so that they can showcase how brilliant and smart they are about their chosen thing. And actually our conversation can help people. And it really is that simple. That's it. There's no agenda. Because I do understand where you're coming from with the idea of the sisterhood is a very noble one. And it would be lovely if it was true all of the time, but it's not. Just in the case of the boyhood or the manhood or whatever you call it, just the humanhood, people aren't always generous or as nice as they seem. And that's just life. That's just how it is. So all I can do is control what I can control. And my little corner of the universe is a tiny little Facebook group, if you look at it in the grand scheme of things. And that's all it is. I see it as people are they're coming into my kitchen. And all I would have is kindness and warmth and support in my kitchen. And if people start, behaving in a certain way that I wouldn't have in my house, why would I have it in my Facebook group? So, it doesn't happen.
That's a lovely way of describing it. It's true. You wouldn't have them in your house, so why would you have them in your Facebook page?
Yeah, and I do that with trolls as well. When I get trolled on social media, obviously outside of the private platform, I wrestled with it for a little while because I thought, am I being disingenuous by removing this comment or blocking someone? And then I realized, oh my goodness, my social media page, the public one, again, is an insight into my kitchen. And you're very welcome to have a look at what goes on in there. But if you don't like it, or it annoys you, or you really, something about me really pisses you off, then leave my kitchen. It's fine. I don't
Leave the
mind.
kitchen.
But if you're going to stand in the middle of it shouting at everybody and making everyone feel uncomfortable, I'm going to really politely just ask you to leave and block you and shut the door. So that's how I see it.
Oh, honestly, it's been so lovely to talk to you. I'll confess, Liz and I were freaking out. We didn't sleep last
Oh
night
no!
because we were worried about interviewing you. You know, you've got this great journalist background. You're a fabulous interviewer. And we're like, oh, I'm really nervous. I'm really, really nervous. And do you know what helped? Was I was scrolling through your Instagram feed, and there's something on there where you said how you didn't sleep and how you were nervous before you had Oprah Winfrey on the panel at Loose Women. I'm like, oh yeah, she's just like us. But you have been
Oh,
so delightful and so warm, and we've taken up twice as much time as we promised to.
that's
But
okay.
honestly, I just fall into your whole narrative. I just want to know more, and I would love to be in your kitchen. I would love to have you as my life coach. Can you tell
Oh.
everybody where our listeners can find more details about your platform?
Well, first of all, that's really kind of you to say for all of that. And I totally get it. It's scary interviewing people. It's scary interviewing anyone who is in the public eye, and especially someone that you've seen on the telly or you've listened to their podcast or anything like that, because there's so many emotions going on. You you're just two, really, you're just two human beings, or in this case, three human beings having a conversation. But you you want them to like you, and I do like you. I think you're great, so that's all good.
Thank you.
And that's your main emotion when you're sitting opposite someone who is famous, is please like me as much as I like you. And I
She
totally
sees us,
get that.
Liz.
I get it. And just as a brief, aside, I will tell your lovely listeners where, they can find me. When I interviewed Oprah Winfrey, did not sleep a wink. There's a reason why I don't have like pictures of it and clips of it on my show reel and this sort of thing. I looked so bad that day because I didn't sleep. I mean, I don't know what was going on with my face. And you're so nervous that you don't even know how to smile. Your smile is like, I looked insane. And also, and I can say this because we're ladies of a certain age, I sweated so much. I was so nervous. And so my way, and I tell it on stages when I do keynote talks because I don't care. Um, I was covered from head to toe in panty liners when I interviewed Oprah Winfrey. I had one under each armpit to try and stop the sweat marks going through. I had one sort of on the back of my neck, just at the top of my dress, literally to try and absorb it because I thought,
Oh,
one, what if I get close enough to her that she hugs me? The heat radiating off me was going to be so
oh
off-putting,
God.
and I was menopausal, and it was Oprah Winfrey. So yeah, totally real. And I went home and it was a blur and I couldn't remember any of it and all of this sort of stuff. And I've looked back on it a few times and it wasn't the best interview, but I did meet her. And my biggest takeaway was, one, I swear Oprah is like our former queen and our king, and thinks the whole world smells of fresh paint and nervous people. Because people were nearly curtsying. We were so nervous about meeting Oprah. And she had this kind of aura about her that she knew. She just knew that she was there
Yeah.
and that, we were in the presence of greatness. And then it kind of happened, and we all looked at each other like, did that just happen? Did Oprah just come in? I didn't sadly get to speak to her other than what we saw on air, which was a real shame because she kind of was whisked in and whisked away. But I can still say I have met Oprah Winfrey and spoken to her. So I'm not quite as scary as that. In terms of where people can reach me, probably the best place. So if you want to come and join my group, come on Facebook. It's Andrea McLean, This Girl is on Fire Facebook group. I'm on Instagram at Andrea McLean 1 because somebody else has Andrea McLean and I don't know how to ask for that back. Apparently you can. If you're listening, the other Andrea McLean, apparently she hasn't posted since about 2012, so I could try and get that one back.
So
But anyway,
annoying.
I'm Andrea McLean 1. And that's kind of it. That's kind of it.
Oh, you are absolutely brilliant. Loved chatting with you today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
This is probably going to be our longest podcast
Sorry.
ever because I'm not cutting any of it.
Oh.
Everything stays in, including our tummy rumbles because we're both fasting.
Do you do? I'm trying to do that. I had a
It's
coffee
good.
this morning with some MCT oil in it because apparently that's good.
That's my thing. Yes, it's supposed to satiate you.
Yeah, it doesn't
Apparently
work,
not
does
during
it?
an interview.
It doesn't work, does it?
It's like a volcano going off. I felt like, yeah, during that interview.
Oh, well, it's been a joy. Thank you both so much.
Thank
It's been
you.
lovely.